Well, to start us off, I think it's safe to say that the time between the release of Halo Wars 2 and Halo Infinite it's been a very serious dry spell for Halo's lore community and really the Halo community as a whole, but especially the Halo community. The Halo lore community. At the same time, and at the same time, I'd even say that the lore community has been the hardest hit. I mean, we've gotten some drops here and there, and more recently,
Yeah.
some novels such as Shadows of Reach, Point of Light, and we've also gotten some canon fodders. But overall, I'd
hmm
say it's safe to give a statement that Halo's lore has gone kind of dry in terms of new content. I've noticed that for lore-based YouTubers, they've been somewhat forced to expand to other subjects and aspects of Halo because there's just not really anything of note left to cover. So, what I was hoping to talk about today is just the lore of Halo Infinite, the potential for it, and other various topics you feel like bringing up. It's really up to you. This conversation isn't set in stone. So, yeah, have at it.
I could ramble about that all day.
All
You
right.
brought up a point there that was kind of interesting when I
Oh,
was just listening to you talk there. You mentioned about the lore community getting especially hit, which is interesting, isn't it? Because in a way, the gaming community, the section of Halo that just plays the games, they haven't had a new game in so long. We've got novels and all this stuff, but I feel like the lore community is more aggressive with sort of the lifespan with which it devours information. It's kind of, I was gonna
oh
make a
yeah.
bad joke. I was gonna be like, it's kind of more like, oh, go ahead.
No, I
You were
was
gonna
I
say
was
something.
agreeing with you. Sorry.
Kind of, it feels like it needs more to sustain it. But I definitely agree. It's kind of a dry spell. Um, and I haven't talked with a,
Oh, you cut out.
well, I don't have a lot of big Halo lore friends, but those that I do have, I did. Okay,
Oh,
we'll start over then.
all right. Go on.
We'll see. Let me check. I think everything is fine here, but yeah, I was just saying it is interesting that we seem to struggle so much to, in the lore community, keep, I guess, our appetites filled with content, even if we have novels and things. But many of the novels that have come out, many of the canon fodders, I've gotten this sense in the community, they've all been sort of like B stories, and I think the community is ready to bite back into the kind of the meat of the main storyline, and it's really that's really where the lack is. And people are feeling that kind of we're feeling the 5 years since Halo 5. Oh gosh, it's been 6 years now, not
Yeah,
fully, but
just
6 years.
about 6 years. Yeah.
Oh god,
I
it's
that yeah
so
that's a
old.
that's an interesting that's actually a great point to touch on. It's the main storyline versus the side stories because we've
Mm-hmm.
gotten, even at the beginning of the of I'd say the 5 year drought, we got things like loot crate, right?
Yeah.
We
Mm-hmm.
Other
There
things.
was some good.
Yeah, and there was some good stuff, and we also got new novels, we got new books, and I'd say that while yes, one could argue like someone who's like a hardcore into the gameplay, it's like, well, I haven't gotten a new Halo game aside from Halo Wars, but if we're talking like someone that's strictly into the first person aspect of Halo, I haven't gotten a new proper Halo game in 5 6 years, and you've still gotten content and uh, really the lore community has always been it loves its extended lore, but it also likes being able to tie that extended lore back into the main story because really
Yeah.
the extended lore isn't meant to be what carries the lore community. It's meant to enhance the lore
Right.
community's experience, and it makes it so
Yeah.
much better for the lore community. And I've noticed that in terms of the lore community's engagement, it's really dropped off. Like I haven't seen many of my fellow lore nerds hopping on MCC that much. A lot of the appeal is just not there for them because it's kind of just run dry. And even in the lore channels on Discord servers I'm in, I'm not seeing much activity in those lore channels because outside of the occasional person who's a little interested in the lore but doesn't really know much, there's not really too much. Sometimes I see someone trying to start a proper conversation about the lore, but for the most part, there's not really much going on in the lore community. The lore community is kind of just waiting at this point, and we I remember when Shadows of Reach. I remember when Shadows of Reach was about to drop. Everyone in the lore community was kind of clambering over it. I almost feel like they were. I almost feel like it was like it's like a crack addiction. It's like I need another hit. I need another hit. and
Yes,
it,
exactly. I
and
have to
that's
agree with
exactly
you
what it
on
was. And
that.
everyone was like, we got the good shit again. We got the good stuff. And part of my language. And then and then they try it. Then they try it, and then it's like, the fuck is this? And don't get me wrong,
Yeah, it's not enough.
Shadows of Reach was a great book, but it wasn't enough to satisfy that itch the lore community had. It was like a nice, quick little high, and then I think I should be concerned that I'm making a lot of drug references in a couple minutes. Uh,
Yes, very little
it's almost
concerned
like
here.
this high that just tapers off
Uh-huh.
almost immediately. It's like I want more, and now I've noticed that after Shadows of Reach, when Point of Light came out, I was like, okay, like cool new novel. I'm interested, right? But at the same time, there's not that excitement, and I'm just waiting
Yeah.
for Halo Infinite. And I've been
You
talking for too long, so go on.
No, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. I love rambles. Any friend that can rant and take a good rant, perfect person in my book. You said something about it's not meant to carry the weight of the franchise, and I think that's the important point. Um, yeah, like we, especially in the lore community, can love a lot of like side stories. We love a good side character, a new look into this universe. It's always, people talk about, oh,
Oh, you cut out again.
we don't need Master Chief in the games. We want to follow a squad of ODSTs. I want to follow a squad of Marines. I
Yeah.
cut out again.
Oh
Okay.
no, keep
If
going. You
this
came
keeps being a
back.
problem, I can switch to a different Wi-Fi. Okay. Um, but at the end of the day, those side stories, that's not enough to support. It needs to eventually loop back into that main franchise, kind of like a trunk of a tree, and the branches, if they spread too far out, the weight of themselves can cause them to snap off. So the
Yeah.
lore community, their interest is dying off because they've got all these like shoots going out, and but they need them periodically to loop back into the main storyline. And without that kind of thing that made you have the love for the universe in the first place, you can't sustain all those stories. So I think that's kind of that fatigue we're sensing with not
You might
the
want to.
universe.
I'm so sorry. You might want to switch a little. You might want to switch over.
Yeah, I was just saying that kind of, I think that fatigue we're sensing is just people are ready to get back into the main storyline and kind of reorient themselves with the franchise because I think oftentimes with universes or fan bases, people get burnt out when they have expectations
Hmm.
that are too far from what reality turns out to be. I was guilty of that with Halo 5. Now, Halo 5 had genuine things you can complain about it, but one thing that made it even worse was that expectations that I'd made for myself after reading so many of the novels between 4 and 5. I had an idea of where I thought the storyline was going to go, and trailers did not help. And so I think um, when it came out and the expectation was kind of foiled, I think what we're seeing a lot with the lore community is people don't want to make too many predictions about the storyline. I've noticed that there's not as
Yeah.
many like, here's what I think the storyline of Infinite's gonna be
Yeah.
exactly like there was for 5. And I think people are a lot more kind of conservative with not getting expectations up, but that's just a guess. That's just a observation I made.
That's a another point leading into that is since we're talking about it looping back around into the main story, I'd
Yeah.
say the reason we saw so much, I guess, hype for Shadows of Reach in comparison to Point of Light, which don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
I saw excitement for, but not as nowhere near the levels of excitement I saw for Shadows of Reach, is because people
Yeah.
were were finally getting a proper glimpse into what happened to the Master Chief after Halo 5, where the Infinity is, and kind of getting a little glimpse at how 343 is kind of taking things. And one thing I've noticed is I think 343 has hopefully, now that I'm not going to say I think, I'm not certain.
Okay.
I'm going to retract this thing.
Knock on wood.
Hopefully,
Hmm.
my hopes are raised based on my reading of Shadows of Reach, that 343's kind of learned their lesson in how they are going to be treating the story from here on out, because I'd
Yeah.
say Shadows of Reach definitely uh, I think when Halo Infinite's going to come out, Shadows of Reach is going to play a supporting role, because it's safe to say that Shadows of Reach obviously has some really important details and things like the created, what the status of the galaxy, the nature of the banished Atriox coming back, things like that, and
Hmm.
of course, most importantly, retrieving the assets. I'm
Yeah.
not going to.
The
I'm not
mysterious assets.
the mysterious assets. I made 00 and I made the mistake of spoiling the whole book for everyone last time, and I'm not making that mistake again. So the only spoiler is Atriox this time. Uh, and but at the same time, Shadows of Reach doesn't seem to carry the weight.
No.
It doesn't seem to carry the weight, and I feel that the lore community after all this time was kind of expecting more. But I
Hmm.
think 343 is kind of playing the long game, because we know that it was Troy Denning that wrote Shadows of Reach. We know 343 was gave a lot of feedback to Troy Denning, saying like, hey, maybe don't say this yet, or don't do
Yeah.
this, because
Yeah.
I'd say 343 is playing the long game, where you can go into Halo Infinite without reading Shadows of Reach. But if you read Shadows of Reach, it's like, oh hey, I recognize that. And from what I've seen with the trailers, I've noticed that the book treats the created and banished in a similar way to what I'm seeing from Halo Infinite so far, which is the banished are kind of like the primary issue for the moment, the pestilence,
Hmm.
and Cortana and the created are kind of like the boogeyman in the closet for the moment. They're there, and they're definitely this very prevalent, all-seeing force that you have to be wary of. But for the moment, I think the main focus is going to be the banished. Do I think that the created are going to be in Halo Infinite? Absolutely. There's no way they're
Yeah.
not going to.
Have to.
They have to bring in the creator. They have to wrap that storyline up. And based off of
Uh,
some things that we've seen, it's pretty clear that the created are still in the hearts and minds of 343. But I have a
yeah.
feeling the first part of Halo Infinite is going to focus on the banished,
I think.
and once we deal with the banished, that's when the boogeyman, aka Cortana, comes out.
And it's, oh gosh, there's so much in there that I want to dive into.
Go on ahead. This is
Gosh,
go into as many
yeah.
things as you want.
Well, you said that 343 playing the long game, and I think that's a smart way to put it because when we were analyzing this book when it first came out, I remember me and a couple lore nerds talking about how it felt like something was missing from the book. Like it felt like a chunk had been taken out. It felt, especially the ending, felt a little bit abrupt. And our theory was that there had been more to the story than originally planned out, which is why that pushed back release date was that they had cut something out of the book and had to basically either reprint it or cut that section out, whatever happened. So I do think that Chet is even though it's a great book and it's a great story, it doesn't feel as much, does it, as like a saga or of a whole adventure like First Strike, Fall of Reach.
It feels like a
Uh,
thriller,
yeah, thrill
like
novella.
a filler thriller.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
let's be real, a good chunk of Shadows of Reach's
It's not
filler.
quite a whole character arc. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's true. Legitellarite, if I had to read, I know everybody says this, but if I had to read Legitellarite one more time, I was gonna scream. I was like, please stop saying this word.
I
And
know. Can't you just say glass?
could you say glass? Just say
Can't
glass.
you say glass? God, if I had to, with the amount of dialogue in Halo 5, could you imagine if in Halo 5 they said, oh, they're chipping at the Legitellarite. Hey, watch that Legitellarite. Oh, the Legitellarite is molten. Oh,
Oh,
this
the
planet was turned
Legitellarite
into
shell.
Legitellarite in
Yeah, exactly.
2552.
Oh gosh, I would die. Oh no. So yeah, it was a great book. And Point of Light, I think, had it released after, and I know that wouldn't be logistically possible, but if it had released closer to a game having come out, people would have liked it more. And not
Hmm.
that it's a bad book, and I think people liked it, but a lot of people just burn out. They just don't want to get invested. I read it and it was weird. I was talking with one of the Halo headquarters lore nerds, lore masters. I said lore nerds,
Yeah,
taking over your
it's
lingo now.
it's one and the same. One and
One
the
of the
same.
same, yeah, pretty much. We talked about how it's almost kind of a burnout. Like it wasn't what we wanted, and we realized what we wanted is basically that main story. You mentioned that the Banished will be the kind of the main villain. I think that's also really accurate. I think Infinite going in, they're going to be the main antagonist, and since it's a spiritual reboot of CE and had that kind of twist of the Flood, whether it be the Created or something, or who knows, the
Well,
Flood
I
again.
think I'm so sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to like
Fine.
clarify one thing. So when I say that the Banished are going to be the main focus, I don't mean the main focus for the entirety of
I know,
the
yeah, the
launch. I
campaign.
meant more like because Infinite has to have a huge amount, even though it's a 10-year development cycle. At launch, Infinite has to have a huge amount of story content, and I have a feeling that for the first sizable chunk of Halo Infinite story, we are going to be dealing with the Banished, and Cortana
I
is
agree.
acting like and Cortana is the boogeyman in the closet, as I said, and it's almost like, oh, all right, the Banished are done. Now let's go. Let's get back into it, and then that's when the boogeyman steps out of the closet, and that's when we face Cortana, and I would not be surprised if the Flood have a role to play because there are a few questions I have about the Flood, Cortana, and Zeta as a whole.
Hmm.
Because it's pretty clear Cortana has a pretty indisputable domination of the domain and the Forerunner networks and assets. With the Guardians, she was able to rip a Halo ring out of slip space, not literally rip the ring apart, but pull it out of slip space. We saw
Yeah.
her activating a ring, maybe Zeta, in the Halo 5 Legendary ending,
Hmm.
which begs the question: why aren't we seeing her sooner? Because there is no way Cortana is going to just let the Banished, who has a super carrier. We don't know if it's a CSO. I made the mistake once of saying, "Oh, the Banished have a CSO," but when I think about it, they just said it has a super carrier, so it
People
could,
piled on, like, that's not canon accurate. How dare you?
it could be it. We don't know what we don't know what kind of super carrier it is.
Yeah.
I initially assumed CSO because that was the only one we know of. But that said, you have the UNSC Infinity, and which is a super carrier, and you have the Banished, which is also a super carrier,
Hmm.
and both forces are fighting over Zeta, which causes, presumably from what we've seen, colossal damage to the ring. I just don't see Cortana with Infinity being on her number one hit list, like so, and being such a scary threat that there was a and this isn't really, for the record, this isn't too big of a spoiler. It's not really a spoiler at all, but there was a chance that if Blue Team didn't succeed, they were just going to be left on Reach.
Yeah.
It says a lot when you are willing to leave John 117 and Blue Team
Yeah.
to whatever on Reach if you are constantly being pursued that way. So I just don't see that much damage being caused to a Halo ring without Cortana noticing. So I'm wondering, like,
Yeah.
was Cortana shut out of the ring by something? Perhaps
Hmm.
maybe offensive bias. I know there was some people who were talking about the three triangle lights,
Yeah.
lights in a triangle formation uh, in one of the trailers. There could it be Cortana is focusing on something, perhaps the flood, though because of the logic plague. I don't know how that would be. Like there, I
There's a lot.
there's a lot in Halo Infinite
There's a lot there.
has to do.
Yeah.
And that's and looping back around to what we were talking about before.
Hmm.
No one thing I noticed is like I got super enthusiastic talking about that and kind of went on a tangent. But then when I talk about other things like Point of Light, for example, it's kind of like
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
eh.
Yeah.
But because it doesn't really tie back into that narrative of Halo Infinite. I want to see what is going to happen with the main story. I don't
Yeah.
want
Me
Point of
too.
Light to be carrying it, and I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't
Hmm.
even read Point of Light. I just read a summary. I know I'm supposed to be reading all the books, but it's just I'm just kind of at the point where it's just give I
Not like
want
it's you don't have to.
I just I don't want to
Yeah.
read
No,
Point of Light.
I
It's
know what
not
you mean.
It's just burnout for me. Burnout's the perfect way to explain it. I want Halo Infinite. That's that's the best way to put
It's
it.
perfectly fine. And I've done that with other Halo novels where I've gone, I'm not in the headspace for this right now. I'm putting it aside. I'm going back later. And when you go back later, you'll enjoy it so much more. But it's interesting you brought up the comment about Cortana being sort of, she's such a threat. They would be willing to leave 117, John, and Blue Team behind, which is true. But Shadows of Reach also did something interesting with the dynamic of the threat of the created. Was that one thing I had felt before Shadows of Reach came out, and I'll be honest, I get that this is an unpopular opinion.
Hmm.
So people can put down your pitchforks. I get it's not popular. Before Shadows of Reach came out, I wasn't really sold on the Banished as a threat. And what I
Hmm.
mean by that was they kind of sold at the end of five that even though I didn't like what they'd done with the storyline, you had the created as this threat, this massive threat. And then we're focusing on basically what are not scavengers exactly, but mercenaries and thugs. It's like, wait, what?
Basically,
Hold
yeah.
on, what? Yeah, like priorities. But then Shadows of Reach, both, yeah, said that she would be so powerful they would have to immediately bug out of there. They also did do a good job of trying to make it clear that they're kind of spread thin. That yeah, the created are powerful, but they're not everywhere. They can't be everywhere at once, and they have sort of priorities.
And the most
And
important thing. Oh, sorry. Did I
yeah,
cut you?
you go ahead. I was
Oh,
kind of trailing off. You're fine.
okay. And the most important thing being that, well, even high priority things the created can't necessarily get to immediately. I mean, the Infinity, it's safe to say, is numero uno on
Right.
Cortana's hit list, and
Exactly.
the Infinity's biggest advantage is it's as long as it remains hidden,
Hmm.
it's fine because and that's actually it somewhat addresses an issue that I've seen a lot of the Halo community. Just as a little side note, a lot of the
Hmm.
Halo community has an issue with the Infinity and the fact that it's like one of the themes of Halo is that the UNSC has always been on the back foot, and so now you have this ship that can do basically everything, and the Infinity is kind of put into this position where it's got five Strident class frigates presumably and five Analyst class electronic warfare frigates, which really are meant for electronic warfare and not heavy combat, and the Infinity could have gotten into a slugfest with the banished supercarrier, and it is my personal opinion that the Infinity would have won, just simply because of its Series 8 max and the sheer number of onager max on board. But it didn't because they don't want to get Cortana's attention, and they had to remain hidden. So the Infinity's kind of in this situation where it can't exert that power. It has to purposely nerf its capabilities, or nerf the extent that it uses its capabilities to always remain hidden. Otherwise, it will be destroyed, which I feel kind of solves the biggest issue that the community has with the Infinity. And at the same time, one thing that I appreciate about the Banished is it's a big threat, so to speak, not because it's like the Covenant in its levels of prowess and the size of its fleet, but because
Hmm.
the Infinity can't provide the best of its support. It can't do
A
that,
lot of sense. Yeah.
and as a result, and at the end of the day, brutes are brutes, and brutes are very difficult to kill. Uh, it's that's just the way it is. I mean, I know, contrary to what Halo 3 ODST would have you believe, and as much as I love ODST, that's not an accurate portrayal of brutes. First Strike actually probably gave us the most realistic portrayal of brutes, where they killed like Grace, for example. Grace had her belly blown out by a single what's the name of
Good.
the what's the name of the grenade
Fraggy?
launcher?
Oh, grenade launcher. Oh, not Spiker. Oh gosh.
Not the
Brute
spiker.
shot.
The brute shot. There we go. A single one or two grenades from the brute shot basically blew out Grace's abdomen.
Remind me of Grace.
Grace was a
Sad about that. No, I
Grace.
said don't remind me of Grace. It makes me
Oh,
sad. I don't
yeah.
want to think about poor Grace and
Yeah,
John, who it
yeah,
was.
that
Oof.
hurts. That death hurt. And so, and we saw how much the Banished had kind of tested Blue Team, because at the end of the day, Spartans or not, it's a Spartans against what is essentially an army. It's an uncoordinated army that's constantly fighting amongst itself, but it's still an army. And Spartans can take on an army. That doesn't mean that they won't come out unscathed. That doesn't mean they'll
Yeah,
come out unscathed. They'll come out seriously messed up, and
that's
that's
true.
what makes the banished. That's what makes the banished perfect to me. Like the banished isn't the covenant. It's not trying to be. What makes it so dangerous is the fact that the banished have the advantage in the fact that the Infinity cannot make the full use of her arsenal. She can't do. And notice that when the Infinity did actually take bolder steps, notice that the banished were suddenly on the back foot. So
Yeah,
it's not like the Infinity is totally helpless here. When the Infinity sends in, it starts sending in like all I had to do was, albeit this is a huge chunk, it sent out half of its fighting force, and suddenly the banished were on the back foot. The banished were, they were losing ships, they were losing people left and right, they lost a lot of their objectives, and at the end of the day, Cortana showed up. That's not a that's I mean that's inevitable.
right.
Um,
Yeah, make enough noise.
make
And
enough
to
noise.
clarify, I mean, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And to clarify, when I said I didn't really buy into the Banish, that was prior to kind of Shadows of Reach and more lore that came out.
Yeah,
The thing
totally.
you're saying, 100% are what I kind of was feeling, is that you realize that they're not supposed to be this terrifying threat as far as overwhelming firepower, unbeatable enemy. Its
They're a pest.
situation has made them terrifying.
Yeah,
They have
they're
become
basically, it's like for example, a rat is just a rat at the end of the day, but a rat during the Black Death, well, that's a whole other animal.
right. Or like a cat.
That's kind of the best way to put it. They're a pest that's been made more scary by the situation at hand.
Like there's a rat who's hiding in a room from a cat, and another, maybe smaller rat has come and is starving and is fighting for the same space. If they fight too large, too loudly, the cat will eat them both. So the bigger rat has to kind of be running around and kind of on the back foot from the smaller rat just because it doesn't want to give its position away to the cat.
That's the
Um,
perfect analogy right there. Yeah.
So yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah, I agree. I'm fascinated to see them in practice because we've read so much about them, and but Halo Wars 2 real-time strategy is not the same as a first
Yeah.
person shooter. Just fighting them in the game, you know?
Well, I think there is one
Really
thing that
curious.
makes Halo Wars 2, the Banished portrayed in Halo Wars 2, very, very, very. It's the huge crucial element
Hmm.
is Atriox. Because the Banished are not a unified force. They are a
Very
hodgepodge
true.
of different groups coming together to try and make something.
Yeah.
And really, the only thing holding the Banished together is Atriox. And the Banished are just a bunch of mini factions trying to get Atriox's attention. And we saw that it gets so problematic that there is infighting, as Shadows of Reach shows us. And you're thinking, well, that's a stark contrast to Halo Wars 2. And the reason is because in Halo Wars 2, the force of Banished we were fighting was directly under the command of Atriox. Atriox could oversee every little thing, but outside of that, basically what was a token force,
Hmm.
Atriox relies on people like Esherim to keep control.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, being the hand of Atriox only does so much for you. It gives you some merit because it's like, well, if I am on good terms with this guy, if I'm on good terms with this guy, I can be on good terms with the boss man. But at the same time, this guy next to me wants to be on terms with the guy who knows the guy, so I got to kill this guy, so he doesn't get in the favor of the guy who knows the guy, and then that's where the infighting starts.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a sustainable growth. It's not a system that's meant to last. It's kind of like Alexander the Great conquering all that land, but as soon as he died and his subordinates who took over parcels immediately falling apart. When you have those sort of
Perfect.
feudal lords, they lead through charisma and strength, which enables them to get a lot done in a short amount of time, but it's not sustainable. And it's true. You're so right about that. That the banished outside of Aatrox, without that organized leadership, is going to be so much more at risk of fracturing. And you see that in Shadows of Reach with oh goodness, I'm gonna have to pull it out. Get my name.
Castor and the other two
Yes,
chieftains.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
You knew where I was
there
going
was
with
this.
this.
I know I feel so bad because I said, oh, we're not gonna spoil everything, but now we are.
Well,
So
it's the book's been out so long. They
fair
should.
enough, fair enough. It
But
like
we
there,
won't spoil it. But there
yeah,
is infighting. We'll say
there
that.
is infighting. Like
There's
I
a ton of
remember
infighting.
one thing that comes to mind is like there was this point where Castor or Callum, is it Castor or Callum?
At what
Castor, I
point?
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Castor. Uh,
Castor's in. Yeah.
Castor and two other chieftains from different packs. They're all with the Banished, but they don't like each other. And there was this moment where they were all about to throw down
Yeah. I
and
love that.
getting ready to basically savagely kill each other with their hammers. And then even
God.
Gatto guy, who was supposed to be the level-headed emissary of Escharum, who was also a former Silent Shadow, was basically prepared to box one of the chieftains with his bare hands, which I thought was
Yeah.
hilarious. I thought that was just the perfect way to summarize the Silent Shadow. Because they are the kind of people
So
that will
true.
box a brute.
It's so true. And you're right. They
Uh,
do. It's so on ready to fracture. That
yeah,
that analogy you put. Oh
yeah.
gosh, that's so good. Poor guy. He knew he was probably gonna die. He was like, yeah, I'll probably take a few out, but then I'm gonna get killed
I
by
mean,
brutes.
it's scary when you realize that he could probably kill at least one of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
true. His skill is.
it's that's the Silent
Yeah,
Shadow for you, making Spartans look like chumps.
I know. Poor Spartan.
Speak and since we're on the topic of the Silent Shadow,
Hmm.
Jega, what is that his name?
Uh,
Uh,
Jaga or Yega? I don't know how to
Jega.
pronounce his
I'll just call him. Well, someone's gonna scream at me in the comments for it.
name. No matter what we're doomed.
Jega. I'm just gonna call him Jega.
Okay,
Jega
Jaga.
is. He's definitely got that Silent Shadow vibe to him with the black and red colors, the red energy sword. I think actually he was part of it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I only read his cannon fodder once, but
Yes.
one thing that's interesting about him is he's different
Hmm.
for an elite because firstly the elites were kind of the are very much their blood is honor mentality really kind of muddles the water a bit, and I have a feeling that if you don't want a medic to operate on you because it may result in blood being spilled uncleanly and not in combat, Lord knows how the Sangheili must view uh, one of their own who has gotten prosthetic, attachments to them because that had to require who knows how much blood to be spilled, and that's just one example. And also, just in general, I, I'm wondering how that's going to happen. And also, there seems to be this element in Halo Infinite of being hunted, which is which kind of fits with the Banished because, excuse me, it fits with the Banished in the sense that the Banished are very brutish. They're very much mercenary like, and from it seems to me that uh, a big factor or in the narrative or plot point, I should say, is going to be the Banished trying their damn hardest to hunt down and kill the Master Chief, and it seems to me that they are really emphasizing the element of hunting down and killing Spartans, as we saw with the new cannon fodder with Hyperion, uh,
Hyperius, I think.
Hyperius, and how he has he has fingers from the fingers of Spartans, two Spartans presumably tied around as like a necklace, like the string going through the fingers of multiple Spartans around his neck as like wearing it as a necklace, which is brutal. And he's got the hunter variant of Mjolnir. I'm hesitant to call it Locke's armor because
We
I
don't know enough. Yeah.
we don't know enough, and it seems a little. I feel like I can understand 343 killing off the rookie because, as I've said, rookie is a character that only works in the environment of Halo 3 ODST and Numa bosses, so I understand why the rookie had to be killed off. But in the case of Locke, The only reason I could see them killing off Locke would be to as almost an admittance of defeat, and that is something something that I was hoping to touch on, because
Go ahead.
this when I say admittance of defeat, it's basically three for threes. It would basically be saying three for three saying, I give up. I give up on this. I give up on this character. I give up on what we were going for before. We're literally killing that. We're going with this now, and I don't think that's the way to go about it. And I'm pretty sure three for
Yeah.
three knows that's not the way to go about it. And this kind of ties into a bit of the Halo community and some issues I talked about with Dashi in the last video, where I somehow forgot how to speak proper English. Where
We're not
there's
much better at video either, so it's okay.
there's this element of, how should I put it? There are two very, very vocal sides right now. You have the Bungie era fans, the classic
Oh,
fans,
yes.
and then you have the Reclaimer era fans.
Hmm.
And there's kind of this alarmist sentiment on both sides, where on the Bungie side, they're like kind of really pushing. They're like saying, "We want to make Halo Halo again. We want to make Halo Halo again." And then you have on the 343 era, Reclaimer era side, people that are like, "But they 343 should. I like this. 343 should be allowed to realize this." And I
Hmm.
think and bear in mind, at this point, 343's had Halo for almost 10 years now, because they acquired it in 2000, technically 2010, because technically 2010, but officially 2011,
Hmm.
2011, 2012. And they have now, so now for half of Halo's developments, half of Halo's lifespan as a franchise, 343 has been in control of Halo. And so
Right.
for half of Halo's time in existence, people have been joining in with knowing 343, 343 and their stuff as Halo, and the classic stuff just being the old stuff, kind of like how Star Wars kind of has like these three generations thing going, where you have the original trilogy people, and then you have the prequel trilogy, and then you have the sequel trilogy
Hmm.
peeps, and you notice that there's a difference between all three quote unquote generations in Star Wars, and
Yeah, of
that's kind
course.
of how it is in Halo.
Yes.
And the reason I wanted to touch on lore and Locke being killed, and the Locke being quote unquote killed, we don't know if he was killed. I want to reiterate that,
Yeah.
is because killing off Locke is three for three basically admitting defeat in that area, and basically letting down 10 years worth of people joining in liking their stuff, because there were a lot of people that came in liking their stuff, there were a lot of people that came in not liking their stuff, and there were people that like their stuff but also like classic stuff.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, 3 for 3 3 for 3 can't just get rid of Locke. 3 for 3 can't just get
Yeah.
rid of Vale. They can't just get rid of Fireteam Osiris. They can't just get rid of the Promethean Knights. They can't get rid of the classic Guardians. I know a lot of people were freaking out over the hologram of the Guardian, the Halo 3 Guardian. I was hoping to touch on that in a minute, if that's all right with you. Um,
Okay.
but for three for three, Halo Infinite, I said this in the last one. Halo Infinite needs to be a monument to compromise, unfortunately, and I don't expect 343 to evenly tailor every little bit to perfection, because that's not going to happen. Some people are going to get more focus than the others, and that's just a fact of life. But at the same time, 3 for 3 shouldn't just abandon the what they all of their old ideas. They can't just admit defeat. And so that's why I really hope that that isn't Locke's helmet. I hope that this
Yeah.
is like a red herring. This is a almost a troll on their part to get people thinking like, is this Locke's dead? Locke's dead, because uh, yeah, it looks a lot like Locke's armor. It even has the same color visor. But I want to make this clear. Locke almost definitely wasn't the only Spartan to wear the Hunter variant. I believe it was called the Hunter variant. It was something worn by Spartans employed by Oni, and Oni has plenty of their own Spartans. There's no, so it could just be something. I don't know, but I really hope that it's not I hope it's not Locke just being killed off.
It's be very serious for a franchise to retcon their canon. And when a franchise does that, they need to be very careful when they choose to do it, if at all, or to completely throw in the towel, like you said, to completely give in. Because, yeah, you might please some of the fan base, but like you said, you've got others, and it does sow lack of confidence. So I don't think they will. I hope they don't. They
Hmm.
can't go back on 4 and 5. We saw that with the, oh goodness, that hidden audio log in that one Cannon Fodder update. Now, granted, it was tiny and it was basically just a nod to Halo 5.
Hmm.
But I think, and I'm hoping, the 343 is going to continue on. And I think they will because there are very few franchises. Look, I've got many franchise fandoms of mine that have made decisions that I've been so mad at. Like, why? Why would you do that? But at the end of the day, they can't go back on it. There's very few fandoms I have that there's a decision they made that I wish that they would go back years later and find a way to undo it. I think if possible, they should move forward, like you said. And I think they will. I have hopes anyway that 343 is going to move forward. And I get that impression from all the stuff we've been seeing. I think, as you say, it's probably a troll. They'll probably have, the armor shown on the brute's shoulder, and then later on, at some point, Locke is gonna just pop in. Not on screen. He might not be in the game, but he's gonna get mentioned. You're gonna find out he's alive. But I think you're right. It's kind of, I think, a little bit of a troll or maybe a wink at the fan base to know what they kind of are vocal about.
Yeah.
And I hope 343 is kind of almost doing that as a dare. Like, we're daring to try and do better. We're not going to settle. But like you said, monument to compromise, it's a good way to put it. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to please everybody. But you said you wanted to say something about Halo 3 Guardians?
You remember that Super Sentinel concept that
Yeah.
Bungie had a while back?
Yeah.
So in the recent Inside Infinite, in one of the screenshots they shared, at the end of the hallway there was a hologram of one of those guardians, and I've seen people freaking out thinking they replaced the Halo 5 guardian design with the Halo 3 guardian design. And my thoughts on this are I don't think 343 would do that. The reason there is a few lore ways they could do it,
Hmm.
and it would work in theory. But at the end of the day, I think that it's more they're going to have both. I think they're going to have both. Uh, as in because Bungie intended their guardian to be basically this super colossal sentinel boss fight, right? They had to cut it. Whereas 343 has their guardians as like these godlike machines that capitulate entire planets and fleets with one swift blast from whatever knockout weapon they have. I don't think, to be on, is it an EMP? Because to be honest, the reason I don't think it's an EMP is because like I'm pretty damn sure the UNSC would have countermeasures against that. Like I mean, EMPs are pretty devastating in our world today, but there is stuff that can be done to protect against it or to at least mitigate the damage. And so I'm wondering like what that is, but
Is that
totally
weapon
different
more?
thing. That's a totally different
Yes,
thing. So
that's a whole other science
that's a whole
debate we could
other
get into.
whole other thing. At the point I'm trying to get here is
Yeah.
I think that I think one thing that's become clear is we're going to see boss fights in Infinite. Uh,
Oh yeah.
yeah, because with the reveal of the three, there are three characters, or at least two, that have confirmed to have hunted and killed Spartans before that are going to be hunting us, and there's going to clearly be this giant sentinel in the game. I don't think they'd feature that hologram for no reason. So I think we're going to be getting a boss fight, and they're not going to call this Sentinel the Guardian. Then maybe they'd call it something similar as like a little nod to its original name. But I
Mhm.
think more or less we're still going to be getting Cortana's Guardians. We're gonna have the old Bungie concepts for the Guardians. I don't think that they're going to change that. And my question to you is, how do you think they're going to handle that, like in terms of the narrative, specifically
Oof.
the Guardians as a whole?
Gosh. See, that's something I've been wrestling with in the back of my mind for a long time now, sort of because the Guardians, as they are, so, as you mentioned, powerful, though their exact weapon of attack is a little to be determined. But yeah, my thought with the Guardians, because they've now scaled back, in a sense, the created, right? That they've got the banished as the forefront. I remember in Shadows of Reach there was a passage, and I don't have time to grab the book and flip through it, but I remember there was a passage where John talked about um, the Guardians were kind of being stationed as almost policing outside of worlds that were being troublesome,
Hmm.
implying there's sort of a limit to them and a kind of a lack. I think, personally, if they're going to have the Guardians show up in Infinite, as you mentioned, sort of boss fights, I agree that they're going to be boss fights. It's going to be like regional, like this territory, this section, you gotta. And this is a very rough analogy, and I don't mean it in this exact way. But if you've ever played an Assassin's Creed game, a more modern one,
Hmm.
like Odyssey, how you have to kind of take over, um, do enough little side quests, and then you have to take over the leader for that section and clear out, you know, all that for the main part is the banished. But I could see a guardian appearing outside of Zeta Halo, and I don't know if at this point you've got you have to activate some, whatever's in Zeta Halo. If you're trying to wrestle for control of Zeta Halo's uh, infrastructure, if there's something else in there like mendicant bias or offensive bias or this mysterious Cortana type voice that was in the one trailer, which could have completely been misleading. You know, whatever it
Yeah.
is, I'm assuming that we're gonna have to use Zeta Halo to fight the Guardians if they make an appearance.
Yeah.
That's a really rough answer, but I have a lot of different thoughts. They're kind of scattered, but that's my best quick answer I can give.
We've mentioned mendicant and offensive a couple times
Hmm.
in this chat, and I going going back to when I mentioned I don't see how Cortana wouldn't be aware or have control over Zeta and not while the Infinity is taking on the Banished.
Hmm.
So I mentioned maybe offensive, maybe something like offensive shut her out, and I wonder. We've seen that quite a few Forerunner constructs have like such as what was the name of that one monitor in Halo 5?
Yeah,
Exuberant
she's
Witness. Exuberant Witness.
super
There we go.
witness. I loved her.
Exuberant Witness. Uh, Exuberant Witness wasn't really a fan of Cortana just taking over her installation, and I almost wonder if offensive bias. What if this is total nothing to confirm this, just to be
Right.
clear. This is
Yep.
total like
Falling here. Go ahead.
spitballing here. What if offensive took control of Zeta and
Hmm.
shut Cortana out? And she's in sorry, not she. Offensive is trying to basically keep the created out of Zeta and keep Zeta's location a secret as a way of protecting the crew of the Infinity while it deals with the Banished. Like and uh, at the same time, it's kind of like, well, it's offensive. Can't offensive just take care of the Banished? I don't know why offensive wouldn't take care of the band. There could be a number of reasons. Perhaps over time, offensive went. We know that Forerunner AI can go rampant. Perhaps
Hmm.
over time, it's just been so long that offensive was starting to go rampant. So it like segmented it like fragmented itself and split rampant fragments out from itself to kind of expand longevity. And so it's just a lot smaller than it was. And so it's focusing its efforts on keeping the created out, and that's the best it can do. Who knows? May or perhaps offensive is playing both the banished and the UNSC because there's the mention of the Harbinger, though don't no idea who the Harbinger is. Perhaps the Harbinger could be Intrepid Eye, as was mentioned
Yeah.
in Shadows.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering about offensive. I'm wondering if offensive or maybe even mendicant is going to be making an appearance in Infinite.
Man. It's tough. I mean, I know every lore nerd would love that. We would be we would be all over it if you got to talk to, in any sense, offensive or mendicant bias. I'm trying to think for fans, they talk about for those people who are new to the game, they want it to make it feel like welcome, and for those who are used to the games, it's like a welcome home. So I
Hmm.
don't think put this. Basically, I would love if offensive bias or mendicant bias had a role to play. If offensive bias is the monitor or something like that, I think it would be really cool. In the sense of like they're the type, they're in control of the installation. But maybe they don't have their name, they've forgotten their name. Maybe they give a different name and they give little hints or they reveal their name. But for those who are fans of the lore, they know what that means. Other people, it's just like, okay, it's this, there's clearly a story here. I don't know what it is. Personally, I mean, there's we've already been talking for an hour, but there's so much more I could we could rant about. I have thoughts personally about, you know, Cortana, whether or not if she's completely locked out of the ring or if there's a snippet of her there that got there when she split into the domain. I mean, I'm not convinced that there isn't some shard or remnant of her there as well, as opposed to whatever, in addition to whatever Forerunner structure is there. Oh gosh, there's so much.
I think that's kind of. I think one thing that's just when talking lore for Infinite that makes it so tough is there's so much there. There's so much there
Yes.
that we want to know, we want to see, and
Hmm.
we're working so hard just to be patient and wait and wait and wait, but we can't help whenever we think about Infinite. It's like, well, what if they do this, or what if they do that, or what if they do
We
this?
can't but see the big picture, and then we're like, well, if this is true, if this, then that. But then if this, what about this situation? So we have to create this complex map of possibilities based on one option.
Exactly.
And if we change one thing, the whole domino like effect is insane.
Yeah. And
Crazy.
that's kind of what makes talk and that's really what makes talking about the potential for the lore of Halo Infinite so difficult
Hmm.
because it's literally infinite, which is ironic to me. It's literally a game of infinite possibilities for all aspects of the Halo community, and it's so hard to predict because 343 has given us so little to work with. And truth be told, a part of it is we know Halo Infinite's in development hell, as with,
Hmm.
to be honest, Halo is no stranger to being in development hell. Halo
I don't want
CE.
to say development hell at this point. Let's say development purgatory. It's like a step down.
Yeah, it's a step down because I'd say now that I think about it, development hell was CE and two, but
Yeah.
yeah, development hell was CE and two because CE and two didn't get they didn't get delays last night. Well, no, CE had plenty of time, but two didn't get delays.
Yeah.
Uh, but
You're
Infinite,
right. Yeah.
Infinite at the very, I think to me, one thing that gives me a little bit of comfort is I know a lot of people were really worried that Infinite had to get delayed, especially after that. Let's be real, clusterfuck of a demo in 2020.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's actually more of a comfort to me
It is.
because 343 showed the game and story as it was, and when it was clear that the game wasn't ready,
Hmm.
they instead opted to take the time to make the best game they can. And
Yeah.
looking at Cyberpunk, the the best option for Halo Infinite is to make the best damn product that you can because
Yeah.
Cyberpunk is really kind of the I think my biggest fear with Halo Infinite is it becomes another Cyberpunk 2077 because I'm gonna give my brief honest opinion about Cyberpunk
Go
2077.
ahead. Might as well.
Great, I think it has a great narrative, or
Hmm.
for like not the best, but I think it's got a good narrative. I
Hmm.
think that the game is the I think that the game could be great. The problem is that I am playing not half a game, more like an eighth of a game. that's
Yeah.
buggy and the frame rate drops so low that I can't do much half the time. There's so many visual glitches that it completely takes me out of the immersion. So my
Mhm.
biggest fear for Halo Infinite is we get a banger of a story and a broken game and a broken game. And that is, I think that's my biggest fear with Halo Infinite.
The-
It's
Yeah,
because like
reasonable.
because it doesn't matter how good the story is. And the lore community, especially for the lore, I think the lore community is not only counting on a good story, it's counting on a good game,
Yeah.
which is,
You
I
mean
think the
for the
lore community,
longevity of the community?
yeah, the lore community out of everyone in Halo, I think has the biggest expectations because
Yeah.
not only are we expecting good gameplay, we are expecting good gameplay alongside an amazing story. It doesn't have to be amazing. A good story at the very least. We're expecting
Mhm.
gameplay, a good gameplay alongside a good story with plenty of lore that can basically hold up the rest of the extended universe for the next 10 years. That's a huge expectation, whereas I know
Yeah.
that for the most part most people they just want a good game, right?
Yeah.
And that the reason, and so one might say, well, why not just focus on making a good game if it's just one subsection of the community? The reason I'd say the lore community is so damn important for the future of Halo is because, being 100% honest, 343 hasn't done much to keep the Halo community up and running up until recently. For since really even since before Halo Wars 2, the
Hmm.
people carrying the weight has been people like Installation 00, Hidden Xperia, Halo Canon, even Halo Follower. I know people have their beef with Halo Follower, but I'm not gonna go ahead into that. Like
Right.
it's
We don't
been,
need to add to that.
yeah, it's been those YouTubers
Hmm.
pulling people in by the thousands and
Yeah.
getting them interested in the expanded universe of Halo, which gets them into the games. That
Yeah.
has really been, and I think that for the last few years, the biggest dedicated section of the Halo community has been the people that are in who are invested in the lore. Because at the end of the day, most people, contrary to, well, yes, a lot of lore nerds aren't hopping on MCC, and I want to, I'll address that in a second. Uh,
Okay.
I'll address that in a second. At the end of the day, the lore community has kind of been carrying the Halo community for quite some time. The
Great.
competitive aspect of Halo, uh, it was hot for a brief second in Halo 5, but it hasn't really been as big. It's still there. It's got a
Hmm.
bit of a cult following, but it's not as big. Then so really the Halo community has been relying on its lore community.
Yeah.
And what is alarming to me is this burnout that, as we've talked about tonight, this
Hmm.
burnout with the lore community is really bad for Halo's longevity. Because
Yeah.
if the lore community is losing investment, and if there is not enough lore for people like Hidden Xperia, Installation 00, Halo Canon, etc., to bring in that audience and to keep their lore content going, and they're forced to go into other aspects, that is taking away the thing that is really holding up a good chunk of the Halo community. And without that very vital pillar of support, I'm not saying the Halo community will collapse. I'm not saying Halo will die, but it will hurt Halo in the long run. And so
Yeah.
I understand 343 has a game to make, but I think they need to be a little more urgent in their lore drops, and I hope that I'm a little comforted by the fact that we got another cannon fodder, but
Yeah.
the lore
Yeah. It's.
community needs some spice, and we need some spice fast. Yeah.
I
All right.
think you're right. But you mentioned that in the past few years they seem to be making more of an effort to an extent. I mean, I always defend 343 as far as like with Bungie purists, and I get those are extremists. They're who don't see anything good with 343. It's like, well, then we wouldn't have so many of the novels, the expanded universe. But with like the canon fodder that just came out, I was looking at it again, and they listed some podcasts to go listen to, and they highlighted Installation 00 and a couple different YouTube channels.
Hmm.
And that's great and all, that's amazing, but you're right. Those people, they kind of highlighted that content that's being created, but you need to help fuel it. You need to give material and give some lore to those people so they can kind of help carry the community. And you're not wrong, because competitive gaming, it goes in trends. Competitive gaming rides waves of popularity, and everything has its day, and everything also dies off of popularity, no matter how popular a game is. So it's those sort of lore nerds, whether of any franchise really, but in Halo in particular, that kind of create a steady flow of content going. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, and uh, I'd also say it's not necessarily just the lore community. To be clear, like you have
Yeah, no, just other
outside the
people.
box content creators like Rocket Sloth, like
Hmm.
Rocket Sloth, or Late Night Gaming. Late Night Gaming's an awesome guy, uh,
They're really cool.
and
Yeah.
Crowcast. I know they're a small channel, but I know that they've
Green
got
Skull,
they're
other
they're
people.
growing and they're awesome people.
Hmm.
uh, it's creators like them that also kind of help extend it because really, um, and I blew myself in as like I'm not I want to get into the lore stuff, but for the most part, I'm really more video essay kind of person about
Yeah.
Halo, and it's not. And in terms of content, I've noticed that I've kind of looked to what is Hidden Xperia doing for inspiration? Like not necessarily whatever's hot from Hidden Xperia's lore breakdowns. I'm gonna make a video on. It's more or less like I noticed that the lore content creators kind of help drive the other content creators in a way, or they
Yeah.
help drive audiences around because now audiences are like, and now that they're being pulled into the lore of Halo. Now they're like, oh well, I want to look at other things, which helps that kind of them kind of other creators kind of grow.
Yeah.
And the lack of lore content and the lack of lore content and the lack of people being pulled in by the lore content creators has been I've noticed that for a brief time, like for example when Zero Zero's Solace ARG was going on, and I was to a very very limited extent helping out by getting it a little bit of publicity. I noticed in terms of Halo trending, I noticed Halo was trending not a terribly noticeable amount compared to its regular, but I noticed it was definitely heightened. And the reason was because people are like, "Ooh, are we getting another like I Love Beast style thing for Halo Infinite?" And it wasn't that, but it was still like an ARG. And so then I noticed that I noticed that other creators had a little boost for a little bit, and even after the Solace ARG thing had been kind of winded down for a while, I was still getting stuff. I was still getting
Hmm.
viewers, and then as time has gone on, it's I found it harder to make video essays there because there's just not there's with the going back to the harkening back to the lore masters, lore nerds. They've kind of had to make their own video essays now
Yeah.
on their own stuff, which kind of leaves not much left for me. And I'm not saying this in any form of spite. They do what they got to do, no judgment whatsoever. It's just at the end, it's just I'm now having a hard time creating content, and my channel has gone down in terms of views. I'm just being brutally honest. My channel is not
Like,
doing anywhere near as well as it used to. I'm just
yeah.
yeah, because
Well,
the
it'll
interest is not there.
definitely come back with Infinite. I mean,
Hopefully,
there's no denying we're definitely on a slump.
yeah.
But I mean, I think finding this is kind of transitioning away from Infinite and talking about sort of content creator
That's fine.
advice or health of the community. But I think branching, finding your niche. I really liked the videos you did that were kind of a glimpse into your avatar. And that was really cool. Like that was really awesome. And I was coming back looking for more. So finding that niche that's your thing. Yeah, video essays are amazing, you're great, but finding that niche that's your thing. Like for me, what I eventually want to get to, no, I know I've got college and a 9 to 5 job, but for me, I love audio plays like Hunt the Truth. So
Hmm.
my dream goal is to not just do audio narration, but I'm actually turning, for instance, the Kelly Gay trilogy with Ryan, even though Point of Light was a little disappointing for me, turning it
Hmm.
into a full-on acted audio play series with Foley artistry and sounds and things because I love audio plays. I think they're
I'd pay
fantastic.
money to listen to that.
No, it'll be free. But I mean, like, it's not now. Will a lot of people like it or listen to it? Probably not. But it's gonna be at least something that I can do because I can't draw to save my life. I cannot. I can't animate things like VFX. And I don't know Laura like Installation 00. It's kind of my thing is I love voice acting. Not that I have
Hmm.
a lot of experience. You've got a really great eye for kind of narrative. Um,
Thank
and I
you.
think finding your niche, and I say that as someone you've got a bigger channel than I do, but finding your
Not
niche
terribly
as for
bigger.
what you want to go forward and grow, change is a good thing. I think you'll find something.
Yeah, thank you. And you know what? Just continuing the fellow content creator pat on the back. I'm saying this genuinely, by
Okay.
the way, just to be clear. Um, I realized as I was saying that like it sounded like I was just saying it to be nice, and I'm said no. No.
It's okay.
Um, I think one thing that I've also noticed is Halo memes are alive and well right now. And
True.
I think you've got a knack for making some funny Halo
Oh,
memes.
dang. Oh, yeah. Thank
Uh,
you. I don't know how much I'll make those, but I find them fun.
they're great. You know what you should do? Uh,
Hmm.
there's a scene um, from a movie. I totally forgot what it's called. I totally forgot what it's called. But basically, it's about this group of basically a bunch of reporters, and they're all getting ready to fight,
Yeah.
and they're all getting ready to fight, and I could totally see you making some sort of
Halo meme off that.
a Halo meme off of that, like some maybe perhaps about the various factions that cropped up after the Covenant War.
I should do that. I really like doing those, and I need to just make the shorter ones because those are the ones that get more views. Like the 10-second, 30-second ones. I put work into making a 3, 5 minute compilation. I should just take one clip and make it into a meme. But
Yeah,
yeah, also
and
great idea. Thank you so much. I
yeah,
will look. I know what
I'll
movie
find
you're
the
talking about, but I don't know what it's called.
uh let me I'm actually doing a Google as we speak.
Is it
Uh,
one of the Anchorman movies?
I maybe um
Now we're
that
going on a side tangent.
we're
Anyway,
going
sorry
on.
everyone.
You know
If
what?
this isn't
It's
edited
fun.
out, I'm sorry for the
No, oh,
listeners.
honestly, I want to keep this in because it's fun. That's really the goal of that's really the goal of these videos. Just people talk chatting.
That's
That's really the goal of it.
that's awesome. Thank you for having me on. I can
Yeah, of
happily
course.
ramble about nonsense for hours, so this is fine.
Anytime.